Prepare for trouble and make it double. The Boozer twins have officially been offered by the Kentucky Wildcats.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what is going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, going to be talking about the Boozer twins who have been officially offered by the Kentucky Wildcats. Also going to dive back into the transfer portal. There's a player that Kentucky has contacted. I want to discuss him and what he could be for this team. Former San Diego State player, by the way. It's not Shai Johnson. It's actually another former SDSU player. It is currently flooding outside of the studio right now, so if the power goes out, I apologize. If we continue to record here, that's great. I'm just going to have to re-record it if things go awry. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everybody out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. If you're listening on podcast, would appreciate it if you followed along there and left a review as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Boozer twins, in case you don't know who these guys are, let me fill you in. These are two of the best recruits in the 2025 class, and they are twins, Cameron Boozer and Cayden Boozer. Cameron Boozer is the number one player in the 2025 class, according to 24/7 Sports and the 24/7 Sports composite ranking. So both of them, he is an even 5 stars, 100 grade, or a 1.0 grade across the board. He is quite literally as high as he can possibly be rated ever, period. Like there are very few players that have come to get the perfect 100 ranking from 24/7 Sports in the past, and Boozer is just one of those few that has been able to be graded so highly. So we talked about a really talented recruit on yesterday's episode in Tre Johnson. Now we're going to be talking about a couple of other really talented recruits, and one of them is one of the best prospects, apparently, that we've seen in quite some time. So you've got Cameron Boozer, and then you've got his brother, Cayden Boozer, who is a shooting guard. He's the number 31 player nationally, according to the 24/7 Sports composite ranking. 6'3", 190. Boozer, or Cameron, I guess I should say, for clarity. Cameron, his brother, 6'9", 215 pounds, power forward. Both these guys out of Miami, Florida, both playing at Columbus High School. Formerly, obviously, Duke legend, Carlos Boozer. These are the two sons of Carlos here. I want to make a couple of things clear about this recruitment that I understand before I dive into what it means for Kentucky. These two players here, these two twins, may not be going to the same place. So you may see Cameron go one place. You may see, Cayden go another. You could probably see Kentucky have a realistic shot to land both of them. I'll say that here at the top, because right now it does not seem like there is a strong lean one way or another. They're also not old enough to take official visits. I believe they'll be able to do that here in a couple of months. But yeah, there's not a strong lean. And on top of that, just because Kentucky offered both of them does not mean they're going to get both of them. This is not a package deal. So you would like to assume that Duke is a player that's going to be in contention for these two guys' services. Two really, really, really high-level recruits. You look at the number one player in the 2025 class in Cameron. His comp is Paolo Banchero. We've kind of talked a little bit about Paolo here on the show before. You've obviously seen how he's performed in the NBA. Just a big, physical, strong-bodied power forward that can shoot, has great touch. That's something that 24/7 notes, and if you go and watch his film, you'll definitely see that. Similar to Tre Johnson, they just play lightly. They've got light hands. They have great touch when it comes to shooting and distributing the basketball. But I think the thing that separates Boozer here, or Cameron here, from maybe Johnson, who is a 6'5" shooting guard, is obviously as you get towards the front court, you anticipate players playing with more physicality, and I think that you definitely get that with Cameron's size here. But he can shoot. He has really, really strong moves in the post. He's a great rebounder, an elite one. Some people are calling him coming out of the draft, or coming out of the high school ranks, and I slip up there. I say the draft. He is apparently supposed to be one of the top draft picks after he has a moment in college. I'm going to pause here to sneeze because apparently I'm just not going to. Thank you, buddy, for completely juking me out there. So, yeah, big, strong, physical power forward that has excellent touch. And I think the word that we're looking for here when you're talking about the modern forward, the modern big man in the NBA, is that Boozer here has versatility. And that's something that we've talked about here on the show before, about how Kentucky has kind of lacked versatility in their front court in the past, and they need more of those guys to kind of not necessarily translate well to the NBA, but even, heck, translate to the college game. You need guys that can step out there and shoot it if Kentucky's going to want to run the free-flowy style of offense that they have in the past. And I think that Boozer, Cameron, that is, would be a phenomenal addition, but I don't want to shy away from talking about Cayden Boozer, because what have we discussed before on the show that Kentucky has lacked, I think, for especially my time covering the Wildcats here with this podcast, and they've lacked for a couple of years now, is they've lacked a scoring guard, a shooting guard that can create in isolation. 6'3", 190, Cayden Boozer absolutely provides you that. He is another guy that I think Kentucky needs to be in pursuit of outside of a guy like Tre Johnson, who's in the 2024 class, by the way. Just want to be clear here. You look at what Boozer is able to do, and that's Cayden. He is able to create consistently despite the fact that he's not like the most dominant physical. Again, it's different from it's different from Cameron here. It's different from bigger forwards. He's not the most aggressive attacking shooting guard. He is just simply a pure shooter that can also create a little bit as well. There's a lot of different highlights. I didn't even realize I've still got some of them pulled up right here. There's a lot of highlights where he's able to just excel in transition. Again, it's not like the most aggressive. I'm running at you full speed. I'm putting an elbow into you. It's similar to Johnson that we talked about on yesterday's show, and the fact that it's just like, it's not a patient style of play, but it's like a rhythmic style of play. That's not a word I used on yesterday's show. It's a word I had written down here. It's just like a very smooth, get to the basket, get to your shot. It's not like jerky or hesitant. It's just all very pure. And for the fact that he has been kind of overshadowed by his brother, who's apparently going to be a very high-profile draft pick, it's a shame, because Cayden himself is a very talented and respectable player coming out of high school as well. So the Boozer twins, according to various outlets out there, have been offered officially by the Kentucky Wildcats. No crystal balls, no future casts on either of these guys right now. We're just, I think, waiting for the Kentucky to have an opportunity to bring one of or both of these guys on campus. Having either of them would be great. Don't want to overshadow what Cayden's been able to do here during his time in college. So if you've got any thoughts on the Boozer twins, if you've got any thoughts on what Kentucky needs out of the recruiting cycle, if you have any questions about any other Kentucky basketball recruits, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. I know that we had gotten questions about Tre Johnson. That's why, or Tre Johnson, not Johnston. That's why I talked about him on yesterday's episode. If you have anything that you want to talk about with Kentucky recruiting or with the transfer portal, YouTube comments at Locked On UK on Twitter is where you can also find me. All right. I want to talk about Chad Baker-Mazara, who is currently, I don't think, a Kentucky lean. I think there are a couple of other SEC schools that are in pursuit of this kid, but he's somebody that would be an interesting addition to Kentucky's roster just based on his dimensions at the guard spot. I want to get to him in just a second. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Bird Dogs. We talked about Bird Dogs on yesterday's show. They are a new sponsor here at Locked On Kentucky. They are absolutely phenomenal shorts, active wear. They can be very versatile in the way that you decide to utilize them. So they've got really good shorts. They sent me a couple of pairs. I've really enjoyed them. They also have pants as well. These can be worn to work meetings. These can be worn to play on the golf course, to do something athletically. I really like them. They sent me 2 pairs. I love the colors on them as well. And I actually have friends and family who really enjoy using these. And I told somebody yesterday that I actually was getting the opportunity to talk about them on the show, and I asked them to give my thoughts on, or their thoughts on, what they were getting out of bird dogs. And I want to read this text here, and I will try and directly quote most of it because some of it I may not be able to read aloud. They're comfortable. They're very nice to be active in or lounge around the house in. I definitely get more looks when I wear them in public. They have better color options that I've seen in other men's active shorts. They look really good on me. Very bright. The compression aligning allows me to go commando, a dream come true, although I don't know if it's meant for that, though. So very high praise from one of my friends here about bird dogs, and I completely agree with them. They sent me these really nice like coral inlining on the compression shorts to contrast rather with like this really nice powdery type of blue. Very beachy, very comfortable, very fun. I really like activewear like this, and again, you can use this for a lot of different things as well outside of just going outside, maybe playing a little pickleball, going to the beach, whatever it may be. So I would highly encourage you guys to go over to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. When you enter promo code LockedOnCollege over there, you'll get a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every single order that you make. So again, birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Get a free tumbler with every single order that you make. Thank you so much to Bird Dogs for sponsoring today's episode. All right, continuing along here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I want to make a note about this because I don't think I'm going to talk about it for a full segment on a show again until the decision is made or getting close to being made. So we talked about on yesterday's episode, it actually might have been the day before, that Oscar Tshiebwe, in my opinion, was not going to be entering the transfer portal if he decided to return to college. Apparently, there were rumors out there that there were colleges through back channels, so to speak, that had reached out to him with nice NIL opportunities or just had conversations about what it would look like if he came back to college. Kyle Tucker of The Athletic reported that. I'm not dissing his reporting. I think it's accurate. I'm just sitting here telling you, I don't think, at least I said on the episode, I don't think he's coming back just to transfer somewhere else. And then he said as much in a recent interview. Apparently, he is not going to transfer if he does come back to college. He said in a recent interview with Ben Roberts of the Herald-Leader, quote, "That is not an option. I will never transfer. Kentucky is my home. If there's a chance to go professional, I'll go pro. If there's a chance to not go professional, I will go back to Kentucky. I've never even thought about going to another place. Kentucky is my home. It's a dream place. I can't leave my home. That's my place forever." He also described his 2.5-year journey in Lexington as probably the best time of my life. Pro or back to college for one final season. He is, quote, "so appreciative of everything that people have done for us and everything that I've accomplished for Kentucky. I'm very grateful for that. I will continue to be a part of Big Blue Nation forever." Whenever he says us, I'm assuming he's talking about not just him, but his family as well. So there you have it. Oscar Tshiebwe, he's not going back to another college. If he comes back to college, period, he's going to be playing as a Kentucky Wildcat. So good to hear him come out and say that officially, and good to kind of put that to bed because I didn't really want to kind of dive further into that, but some of you guys were asking to get my thoughts on it. So speaking of the transfer portal, entering the transfer portal, coming out of it, looking at different prospects, whatever have you, there is another former San Diego State player that the Kentucky Wildcats are currently looking at. Now, he's not currently coming out of San Diego State. He's actually coming out of JUCO, if I'm not mistaken. He currently plays or used to play at Northwest Florida. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I believe I'm correct on that. His name is Chad Baker-Mazara. Really cool name there. The interesting thing about Baker-Mazara, and this is kind of what I teased heading into this, is that he has really impressive size for the position that he plays. So he plays guard, but he's listed at 6'7", 190, kind of similar to a Shai type of player, if you will. In his season with SDSU, you go and look at his stats, I'm going to be honest with you, they're subpar. He averaged 6.4 points, 2 rebounds, less than an assist, a steal, and a block per game. He shot 42% from the floor. He did shoot 39% from 3, so he can shoot from outside the arc, but that was essentially 2 seasons ago now. He, since then, transferred over to, like I mentioned, Northwest Florida, and in his JUCO last year, he averaged 15.2 points per game. He shot almost 50% from the floor, 49% overall, and then 46.9% from deep. So he shot almost 50, 40, 47, and then 83.5 from the foul line. He averaged 3.6 rebounds and 2.1 assists per game as well. I think it's pretty clear based on his numbers that he is a volume scorer at the guard position. Is that what Kentucky needs on the roster? No, but I think it's a very interesting addition possibly at that wing spot, especially if Reeves does not come back. Because if Reeves does not come back, then you could slot in a guy like Baker-Mazara, who could be that tweener between the 2 and the 3 spot and could get you buckets off the bench or even start if Kentucky felt that confidently about him. I don't think that would be the case if the Wildcats wanted to pick him up, but according to Baker-Mazara's Instagram page, no, actually not his Instagram page, his Twitter page, excuse me, I'm sorry. He tweeted out and said that Kentucky had reached out to him. He just got off a phone call with them, apparently. So we'll see what the Wildcats do. This would be somebody that I would be interested in again if Antonio Reeves were to decide not to return to Kentucky, which at this point I feel like is not a guarantee, but I'm feeling pretty confident that he's going to come back to the Wildcats. I would feel pretty confident in making that prediction right now. But if he doesn't, it'd be nice to add a really good three-point shooter and a really lengthy guard in Baker-Mazara. Tristan Ferris, friend of the program, tweeted out a couple different things he noticed about him. Obviously, good three-point shooter, but something that he noted about his defense is that he was consistently caught kind of flat-footed, which is something that you can see sometimes out of these lengthier guards now. It's actually something that I've seen covering a couple of different teams in the SEC. Not going to get into any details here, but looking at some recent high school prospects that made their way onto SEC rosters, it was something I noticed watching them in practice, watching them in games, is that some of these longer guards would consistently find themselves trying to make up for their inability to stick with a man on defense by utilizing their physicality and their length. So instead of quickly adjusting to a move a defender would make or quickly moving alongside a defender, they would just simply use the length of their arms and their legs to just get to the new spot quicker. And I think that that's okay. You're not going to be able to get away with that, I think, consistently whenever you move to a more difficult college game, whenever you move to a place like Kentucky, or if you make your way somehow to the NBA, you're going to have to find yourself being quicker, anticipating things more often. But at the end of the day, is him being flat-footed on defense the end of the world? No, even Ferris said that. I mean, I think him being a scorer like he is valuable enough. So an interesting prospect for the Kentucky Wildcats. I think the final thing I want to note here on today's episode, this is something actually that I don't think we talked about at all whenever it happened, which is that Lance Ware actually took a visit to Providence, which is kind of funny considering former Kentucky Wildcat Bryce Hopkins is currently still there. Maybe have 2 Wildcats in the front court-ish positions there for the Friars. So we'll keep an eye on that. I like Lance Ware, and for him to maybe reunite with a former Kentucky player would be awesome. So if you've got any thoughts on Baker-Mazara, I'm intrigued by him. It would be specific circumstances that I think Kentucky would get him in. Auburn and Texas A&M are 2 teams to watch here, just based on my understanding. But if you have any thoughts on them, you can leave that in the comments below. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below, or you can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.